Bhagavan wrote an essay called Nāṉ Ār, which means who am I? It was originally answers that he gave when he was very young, when he was about 20, 21 years old, to a devotee called Shiva Prakashan Pillai, who came to him, and the first question Shiva Prakashan Pillai asked was, who am I? And Bhagavan answered, awareness alone is I. And then there were a series of questions which were asked not all in one day, over a period of time, but in those days Bhagavan wasn't talking very much, so he would often he would just write his answers in the sand, or on the sandy floor, or on pieces of paper that Shiva Prakashan Pillai gave him, or on a slate. So Shiva Prakashan Pillai noted down whatever answers Bhagavan gave, and he kept them with him for many years, never thought of publishing them or anything, but that was in about 1901, 1902. So more than 20 years later, he had written a biography of Bhagavan in a long Tamil verse, and some of his friends wanted to publish that. And in that biography, he had included a summary of the teachings Bhagavan had given him at that time. So in an appendix, he included 13 questions and answers that he had asked Bhagavan at that time. Questions he had asked and answers Bhagavan had given. So when that was published, people were very interested. They asked him to, if there were any more things he had recorded. So then a more complete version of what he had recorded, consisting of 32 questions, I think 30 questions and answers, and some miscellaneous sayings, were published as a book. And because that was so useful, Bhagavan, of his own accord, in about 1926 or so, rewrote it as an essay. That is what we're talking about now. The essay consists of 20 paragraphs, and so far we've done 8 of them. This is the 9th paragraph we're dealing with now. Before beginning this paragraph, because the first sentence of this paragraph is a continuation of what he said in the previous paragraph, so I'll just quickly summarize that. In the previous paragraph, he said for the mind to cease, or for the mind to come to an end, except self-investigation, there's no other adequate means. And if it's made to subside by, or to cease by other means, the mind will remain for a while as if it had ceased, but will rise up again. And then he gives the example of pranayama. Pranayama means control of the breath. He says even by pranayama, the mind will cease or subside. However, so long as the prana, that prana means life, but it's manifested, I mean, the most obvious manifestation of prana is the breath. So it's by controlling the breath that they try to control the prana, the yogis. So, however, so long as the prana remains subsided, mind will also remain subsided. And when prana emerges, it will again emerge and wander under the sway of its vasanas. That mind will again emerge and again wander under the sway of its vasanas. Vasanas means all its desires and attachments and but draw it outwards. And then he explains it saying, the birthplace for the mind and the prana is one. What he means by the birthplace is the source from which they arise, which is our own real nature. Though he calls it birthplace, it's not literally a place, it is the pure consciousness that we actually are. It's from that both mind and prana originate. Thought alone is the swarupa, the nature of the mind. The thought called I alone is the first thought of the mind. It alone is the ego. From where the ego rises, from there alone breath also arises. Therefore, when the mind subsides, the breath will also subside, and when the breath subsides, the mind will also subside. The prana is called the gross form of the mind. Until the time of death, the mind keeps the prana in the body, and at the moment of death, and at the moment the body dies, grasping the prana, it leaves, it goes away. So the mind always takes the prana with it. That's a metaphorical way of saying whenever the mind appears, it appears in a body and with life. So that's metaphorically said. At the time of death, the mind takes the life away with it, the prana away with it. And then he concludes, therefore, pranayama is an aid to restrain the mind, but will not bring about its destruction. So it's continuing from there, but he begins this paragraph. In the first sentence of this paragraph, he says, pranayamam polave, murti dhyanam, mantra japam, ahara niyamam, embavagaleyum, manate adakum sahayangale. That means just like pranayama, murti dhyana, mantra japa, and ahara niyama are only aids to restrain the mind. Murti dhyana means meditation on a form. That means a form of God. Mantra japa is repetition of a mantra, or usually mantras contain the name of God, so that's implied either a name of God or some words containing a name of God. And ahara niyama means restriction of diet, particularly it means restriction of consuming only vegetarian food. He says all these are only aids to restrain the mind. Because in the last sentence he said pranayama is an aid, but it will not bring about its annihilation of the mind, he implies the same here. But it will restrain the mind, but it will not bring about its annihilation, all these practices. Then in the next sentence, he says, Murti dhyana talum, mantra japatalum, manam ekagrate adekiridu. That means by murti dhyana and by mantra japa, the mind gains ekagrata. Ekagrata means one-pointedness. At this point, I'll go into a slight digression to clarify what Bhagavan is saying here, because read superficially, it could appear that Bhagavan is talking about murti dhyana, a meditation of form of God, or mantra japa, as an exercise in concentration. So if you do these, you'll get one-pointedness, you get that power of concentration. But actually what Bhagavan is saying here is much deeper. When he talks about murti dhyana and mantra japa, there are different reasons that we could meditate on God or repeat the name of God. One reason is most people who go to churches, to mosques, synagogues, temples, whatever, they go to there because they expect something from God. They expect God to give them health, wealth, longevity, take care of their children, take care of their loved ones. If they're fighting a war with some other country, but our side should win and the other side should lose, or my football team should win and the other football team, whatever. People go and ask God all sorts of things. That is not real, according to Bhagavan, that's not real devotion to God. That's devotion to what we expect to get from God. That is what in Sanskrit is called kamya bhakti. That is devotion for a desired end. It's not devotion to God himself, but devotion to what we expect to get from God. That is not the type of devotion he's talking about here. When he's talking about murti dhyana and mantra japa in this context, he's talking about murti dhyana and mantra japa done for the love of God, not for anything we expect to get from God. In another work of his called Upadesha Undiyā, which is a work of 30 verses, he says in verse 2 that action cannot give liberation. The nature of any action you do, actions are self-perpetuating, because when you do an action, experience the fruit of the action, a seed remains, the tendency to do the same action again and again. Because our actions are driven by our desires, and we do the actions, we experience the result of the action, but the desire remains to perpetuate the endless cycle of actions. So he says action doesn't give liberation. But then in the third verse, he says, but if action is done nishkamya karma, that means if action is done without desire for any benefit from it, but just for the love of God, that will purify the mind and show the way to liberation. And then in subsequent verses, he begins to talk about different types of action one can do for the love of God. They are puja, which is worship, physical worship, japa, which is by speech, meditation, which is by mind. These are all different ways, different actions we can do for the love of God. The actions done by speech are more purifying than actions done by body, and actions done by mind are more purifying than actions done by speech. That is because the impurities are the desires in our mind. The subtler the action we do, the closer we are to rooting out those impurities. We can be worshipping God, but thinking about so many other things. We can be doing japa mechanically, but meditation, if our mind slips away to think of other things, we're no longer thinking of God. So in this order, they're more purifying. But the important point in this context is what Bhagavan emphasizes is it's not the action we do that's important, it's the love with which we do it. If we're doing it with love for worldly benefits, that is not going to purify the mind. That's just feeding our desires. Whereas if we do it just for the love of God, just for the love to surrender, when we love something, we want to, if we truly love a person, we're not looking for what we can get from that person, what we can do for that person. So love is giving. So the more we, the ultimate love for God is the love to give ourselves to God, the love to surrender ourselves to God. So it's that if we do dhyana, that is murti dhyana, meditation of form or mantra japa, repeating a name of God, with the love to surrender ourselves to God, by focusing on that love to surrender ourselves increases, and our desires for other things are wane. They get weaker and weaker. So that is what Bhagavan is referring to here as murti dhyana mantra japa. Some people do meditation because they want to get something, some benefit. But it's not that. Bhagavan is here talking about doing murti dhyana and mantra japa for the love of surrendering ourselves to God. That is what is implied here. So when he says, by murti dhyana and mantra japa, the mind gains one-pointedness, the one-pointedness he's talking about is the one-pointedness of love to surrender ourselves. That's not stated explicitly here, but in the context of his teachings as a whole, that is what we have to infer is the meaning here. And that is very relevant to the subsequent sentences. Then he gives an analogy in the next sentence. Sada chalitu kondirakum yanein tutikail orus sangaliye kodatal avyani epidi ver ondreum patramal adeye patri kondu salomo. That is, just as if one gives a chain in the trunk of an elephant, which is always moving That's elephants, they're tamed elephants who are trained to do work, or sometimes, for example, they may, in South India, an elephant may take part in a temple procession. So it'll be walking down the streets, people will be around. If the elephant isn't given something to hold, it'll be going here, there, trying to catch something. If there's a barrow of fruit there, it'll try to take some fruit, or if there's something on the floor, it'll be picking it up. So to keep the elephants from catching this and that, it's the mahu, the elephant, the person who's in charge, who looks after the elephant, will give it a chain to hold. Then because it's holding that chain, it won't be trying to hold this or that. Like apadiye, in exactly the same way, sada chalitu kondiricum, oh, wait a minute, sorry, I didn't read the full translation of that first clause. Just as if one gives a chain in the trunk of an elephant, which is always moving, the elephant will proceed grasping it without grasping anything else. Apadiye, sada chalitu kondiricum manamum, adane edo orunamum aladu rupatil parakatal, adeye patri kondiricum. In exactly the same way, the mind, which is always moving, is wandering about thinking this or that, will, if one makes it habituated to holding on to any one name or form, remain grasping it alone, without thinking unnecessary thoughts about other things, is the implication. Again here, we have to understand this sentence in the context of Bhagavad teachings as a whole. He's not just talking about a concentration exercise, thinking of just one name or just one form. Because if you do it as a concentration exercise, you may be able for 20 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, be able to think of just one form or one name. But as soon as you stop thinking of that, your mind will jump out and start thinking about so many other things. But if you are doing it with love, that love to think of God, it won't be only during the time of meditation, but the thought of God and the love to surrender oneself to God is there. It'll be going on continuously throughout one's life. At every moment we are in life, all our actions are driven by our desires, by our likes and dislikes. So at every moment we are responding to situations, we are seeking happiness here and there. The more we give up desire for external things, the more we turn our mind within, the calmer we will be, and the less the mind will expand as many thoughts. Then in the next sentence he says, Manam alavirenda ninevugalai virikindra padiyal ovoru ninevum adi balavinam aha pokindradu. Because of the way in which the mind spreads out as innumerable thoughts, each thought becomes extremely weak. When the mind spreads out in as many thoughts, its energy gets scattered. So each thought becomes extremely weak. But again here, Bhagavan is not just talking about the thoughts, because why the mind spreads out as many thoughts is because of our many desires. Whereas if we focus our mind on love of God, using aids like mantra, Moti Dhyana, mantra japa, our will become more one-pointed. And when our will becomes more one-pointed, our thoughts will also become more one-pointed. That's the underlying implication here. So if we allow our mind to spread out, and thinking many thoughts and having many cares, concerns, worries, hopes, fears, the mind will become very weak. Its thoughts will become, each individual thought will be weak. Because what gives a thought its strength is the attention we give to it. If we're always dwelling on a particular thought, if for example, we have a particular some people have irrational fears, like they may have an irrational fear of spiders. If they're always fearing spiders, that thought of a spider will always be there, so they'll always be looking here, there, where's the spider? So the more we dwell on any type of thought, the more strength we give to that thought. So when we've got many cares and concerns, our mind is spreading out in many directions. Such a mind is not an effective tool for any type of spiritual practice. So in the next sentence he says, when thought, Ninevugul adanga ekagratan me adendu, adanal mana balate adendu, manatikum, Atma-vicharam, sulapamai siddhikum. Now he comes to a real point he's intending to talk about. When thoughts reduce and reduce, for the mind which, gaining one-pointedness, ekagratanmai, has thereby gained strength, Atma-vichara will easily be accomplished. It's here that what I was saying earlier becomes very relevant, because if, for example, we were doing some meditation or japa or something, in order for some desired end, our mind would maybe become one-pointed on that. Supposing I have a desire to become a rich businessman, or I have a desire to be a successful politician or something, and so I think I can't do this. I'm, after all, an ordinary weak person. I need the grace of God to help me to become very powerful. So I meditate on God, thinking that will make me strong and able to conquer over all my political opponents, and I'll rise up in politics, if that is our belief. By meditating with that aim in mind, the mind will become one-pointed on that aim, but that will not help in the practice of Atma-vichara, because that is an outward-going aim. Moreover, desires don't exist in isolation. If we have one desire, there are many other desires behind it. So if we focus on one desire, if that desire is frustrated, that will agitate our mind and produce many thoughts. Even if that desire is satisfied, after so many years of struggling to rise up to the top of my political party and become Prime Minister, I finally achieved that aim, and I believe, this is because of all my meditation. But once I'm Prime Minister, I'm happy for a short while. But then there are so many other problems, so many, nothing, even if, Bhagavan says the nature of desire is such that it will make even an atom into Mount Meru before it's attained. That's even a very insignificant thing will seem very big before we attain it. And even Mount Meru will seem like an atom once we attain it. If I'm poor and I don't have any money, getting £100 or £1,000 seems like a very big achievement. So if I work hard and save money and finally I have £1,000, it seems to be a very big thing, very big goal. But once I've got that £1,000, am I satisfied? No. I want to have £10,000. And when I got £10,000, I want £1 million. And when I get £1 million, I want 100 million. And when I want £1 billion. And even people with billions, there are some of them in the world now, are any of them satisfied? They want more and more and more. So desire is endless. The things which seem very big before we achieve them become very trivial once we achieve them, or something else becomes the big goal we want to attain. So even if we make our mind one-pointed on having one aim, like I want to be a millionaire, even if that is our aim, and we pray to God and we meditate and we also do all our crafty business and cheat on the way, and finally we get our £1 million. Does the mind subside? Does the mind become calm? No. Again, it spreads out as more thoughts, more ways to earn more money. So that's why what Bhagavan's talking about here, he's not talking about Moti Dhyana Mantra Japa as, he's not talking about Kamya Moti Dhyana or Mantra Japa. He's not talking about Mantra Japa or Moti Dhyana done for fulfillment of desire. He's talking about Nishkamya Mantra Japa and Moti Dhyana. That's done not for any desired end, but just for the love of God. So if we meditate on God just for just for praying for nothing but to surrender ourselves to Him, that will reduce our desires. And when our desires are reduced, our thoughts are also reduced. So when Bhagavan talks about thoughts reducing and reducing, he's not just talking about immediately, but you can sit meditating and you can ward off all other thoughts and think just of the name of God. That's not what he's talking about. What he's talking about is the overall thoughts that rise in the mind, the impetus with which thoughts rise. Okay, throughout the day we have so many thoughts, that's natural, that goes on. But how much is invested in those thoughts? If we have many cares, concerns and everything, there's a lot of emotional power and a lot of emotional investment in our thoughts. Our desires are very strong. But the more we learn to surrender ourselves to God, the impetus of our thoughts is much less. So when the force of desires which cause our mind to become agitated, when that reduces and reduces, then the intensity of our thoughts will also reduce. And that is what is otherwise called a purified mind. The more we meditate on God with love, the more our desires for other things drop off. And a mind free of desires is called a pure mind. So when the mind is purified by such devotional practices done just for the love of God, the desires reduce, therefore the thoughts reduce, and the mind becomes one-pointed. That's one-pointed in its love for God. And for such a mind, which is thereby gained strength, because instead of being scattered as many thoughts, it's focused on one thought alone, the love to surrender oneself to God. For such a mind, self-investigation will be easily accomplished. Because self-investigation means turning our whole attention within. Why, when we try to turn our attention witin to attend only to ourselves and not to anything else, our attention is constantly being drawn out towards other things because of our desires, because of our attachments, because of our interests and cares and concerns. So the more all these desires, cares, concerns, interests drop off, and the more we're concerned only about one thing, to surrender ourselves to God, the easier it is for us to turn our mind within and to leave everything in His hands. One of the reasons why our mind comes out is we think so much depends on us. If I don't do this, if I don't work hard and earn money, then what will become of me? How will I support my family? How will I do this? How will I do that? We think so many things we think depend on us. But if we understand that God is taking care of all these things, if we surrender ourselves to God, everything will happen as it is meant to happen, as it's going to happen anyway. The less momentum or less force, less the force with which our mind jumps out and gets engaged in other thoughts. So the less outward going drive there is, the easier it is to turn the mind within. That's why Bhagavan says that when thoughts reduce and reduce, the mind gains one-pointedness and thereby gains strength, and thereby it's easy to it'll succeed in self-investigation. It'll succeed in knowing what it actually, investigating itself and knowing what it actually is. our attention is like a two-edged sword, because our attention is what gives strength to our thoughts. Because we attend to thoughts, because we attend to our cares, concerns and everything, these loom very large in our mind. So whatever is important for us, it's important for us because of the attention we've given it. So our attention we can use either for attending to things other than ourselves, or for turning back within to attend to ourselves alone. So if we do any type of meditation for some desired aim, we are sharpening one edge of the sword, but the edge we're sharpening is the outward going edge. In order to turn within, we need to sharpen the inward going edge of the sword. That inward going edge of the sword is the love to surrender ourselves to God. So what Bhagavan is talking about here, he's talking about these devotional practices, meditation and japa, done for the love of God alone. That will, if that love for God is strengthened, then Atma-vichara will be easily accomplished. If instead we do it for some desire, that desire will be strengthened, and it'll be still more difficult for us to turn back within. That's concluded. With that sentence, Bhagavan's concluded what he's saying about the benefit of these devotional practices. In the first sentence of the paragraph, he mentions one other thing, which is ahara niyama. Ahara niyama means the restriction of, ahara is what is taken in. Generally ahara is taken to be the food we take into the body. It can also be understood metaphorically as what we take in through our senses. So if we're always feeding our mind with things that will draw it outwards, that is not is not going to be helpful to us. So we not only need to restrict the food we take into our mind, into our body, we also need to restrict what we take into our mind from the outside world. If we're always interested in sensual pleasures, seeking pleasure outwardly, and we are feeding our mind with those sensual pleasures, that's drawing the mind out more and more. So ahara niyama can be literally, it can be taken as meaning the food we take into the body. Metaphorically, it means all that we take into the mind through the senses. So he deals with, he talks about that in this last sentence of the paragraph. By mita sattvika ahara niyama. That means, niyama means restriction or restraint. Ahara means what is taken in. In this context, we can take it to mean food, or we can take it to mean what's taken in through the senses. Mita means moderate, in a moderate quantity. But the most important word is sattvika. Sattvika refers to the sattva guna. Sattva literally means, sat means being or reality. Tva makes it into an abstract noun, so it literally means beingness. But beingness means the calmness and the clarity. If water is much agitated, we can't see what's lying in the bottom of it. But if the water is calm, we can see deep into it and see what's lying at the bottom. Likewise with the mind. If the mind is much agitated by desires and cares and concerns and everything, such a mind isn't a clear mind. And it won't be easy to turn it within and see what we actually are. But the more the mind settles down into a state of being, into sattva, that the being, state of being, the beingness, or the calmness, that will give clarity to it. So all those are implied by the term sattva. So, Mitta Sattvika Ahara Niyama means the restriction of taking food but will be conducive to a state of sattva. So certain foods, like if we eat meat, that meat has been, in order to obtain that meat, an animal had to be killed. While being killed, that animal will have so much fear and everything, that all those emotions the animal is feeling, at the time it's being killed, it's all there in the flesh. And so obviously eating the flesh of animals who've been killed, obviously that isn't sattvic. But even non-animal products are not, can be not sattvic. For example, we know if you drink alcohol, what effect it has on the mind. Alcohol doesn't create clarity, it creates confusion. Like that, so many foods, different foods have different qualities. They have different effect on the mind. So it's the foods that have that, that don't dull the mind and don't agitate the mind. Those are sattvic foods. Those that agitate the mind are called rajasic. Rajas means the activity. Those that dull the mind are called tamasic. Tamas means dullness, darkness. So we want to take food that will be conducive to a calm state of mind. In itself, that is not going to do anything. You can be vegetarian but still have a lot of worldly desires and everything. But if we're following the spiritual path, if we want to go deep within, if we want to surrender ourselves to God, having a calm and clear mind is a necessary tool. The best aid to that, physical aid, is this is this restriction of just taking only sattva conducive food. So what Bhagavan says is here, Ella niyamam galilum surrender. That means which is the best of all niyamas, all restrictions. Mitta sattvika ahara niyamatal, by this restriction of taking moderate quantities of sattvic food, which is best of all restrictions. Manatin sattva gunam vrittiyahi, the sattva guna, that quality, that sattva quality of the mind increasing. Atma-vichara sahaya undakirdu, for self-investigation help will arise. I mean, that is a great aid to anyone who wants to follow this path of self-investigation. And likewise, if we take a more metaphorical meaning of ahara, not just the food we eat, what we take in through our senses, if we're always watching violent movies or movies about war or about, or if we watch pornography or things like that, that's obviously going to be not having a sattvic effect on our mind. They'll be drawing our mind outwards, creating thoughts of violence, thoughts of all types of unwanted thoughts will be created in our mind. So it's not only important that we take in sattvic food, but also take in sattvic as far, well, obviously we can't avoid totally, we live in this world, we see all sorts of things happening around us, but we shouldn't allow our mind to dwell on things that are going to agitate our mind and disturb our mind. We know there are so many injustices in this world. If we see an injustice, we do what we can to try and alleviate it, but there are so many injustices in the world that we can't do anything about. So if we're always thinking about injustices and thinking all these people are so bad and everything, that's unnecessarily we're allowing our mind to dwell on things that will draw it outwards, and we can't solve these outward problems, and it's unnecessarily agitating our mind. So rather than, in another later paragraph in Bhagavan says it's not good to allow the mind to dwell more than necessary on worldly matters. because that's just drawing the mind outwards. It's not helping us to surrender ourselves to God. Ultimately, if we believe in God, if we trust in God, this whole world is... We don't know why some people are suffering and some people seem to have a good life. It's all... For some reason, all these things are happening. And it's God is taking care of all these things. If we believe God loves us, He loves everyone else equally. And if we believe Bhagavan's teachings, the philosophy of Advaita, God is nothing other than our own self, what we actually are, what is actually the core of our being, our real nature is God. So, because God is what we actually are, and because our nature is to love ourselves, God loves all of us as Himself. He doesn't love us as individual people, He loves us as the reality that He actually is. So that love of God is what is generally called grace. That grace is what draws us back towards God. And since God exists within us, that means that entails turning our mind within and surrendering ourselves to Him in our heart.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
Can you just go a bit more deeply into the distinction between prana, breath, and thought? What exactly is prana?
Prana simply means life, and obviously the most evident manifestation of life is breath, and it's also the only basic physiological function that we can to some extent control. We can't stop our heart beating, but we can, for some time, restrain our breath. So we restrain the prana by restraining the breath. So often the word prana is used almost to refer to the breath, but it's to be understood as not meaning just breath, it means life as a whole.
Is it the life force?
Life force, yes, you can say.
From God, it's the force that comes from God.
Well, everything comes from God.
Yes.
If we, so long as we understand God is nothing but our own real nature.
Right.
That's why Bhagavan said the birthplace of the mind and the prana is one.
Yes.
That birthplace is, we can say God, but God means only our own real nature.
Yes. So we can't actually control prana. I mean,
well, we can by restraining the breath. When our mind is much agitated, though we may not be observing it, our breath will be agitated. If you suddenly receive some shocking news, you're breathless for a while. It took my breath away, we say. That means when the mind when we receive some shocking news, the mind doesn't know what to think. The mind is put in a state of paralysis, as it were, and the breath also stops. Right. That's why Bhagavan said, Bhagavan made it clear pranayama is not at all necessary, but some people think that if you do pranayama, you can then calm the mind, then you can use that calm mind to do meditation or self-investigation or whatever. Bhagavan said, but to do all these exercises of pranayama, it's also said you shouldn't do these exercises unless you've been trained by someone who's an expert in it. Because if you you can just stop your breathing for a few seconds and hold it in and hold it out. But the pranayama, some pranayama exercises can be very challenging for a person who isn't adept in doing them. So Bhagavan said all these elaborate exercises are not necessary. If you want to use the breath to calm down the mind, the simplest thing is just simply to watch your breathing. Because by just watching the breath going in and out, the mind is calmed down. But that in itself is just calming the mind is in itself of no use. We need to turn the mind within. And in that respect, watching the breath can actually be a bit of an obstacle, because if you're habituating the mind to watching the breath, whenever it tries to turn within, it will be noticing the breath, and that'll be one more thing for it to, one more object for the elephant's trunk to catch hold of. So it's what ultimately better than any other type of meditating on anything, whether the breath or even a name or form of God. The best thing to meditate upon is ourself, because ultimately what we need to know is ourself, and God is not anything other than ourself. So that's why Bhagavan says in verse 8 of Upadesha Undiyar, rather than Anya Bhava means Anya means what is other. Bhava in this context means meditation. So rather than meditation on what is other, in the context the implication is, rather than meditating upon God as if he was something other than ourselves, Ananya Bhava means meditating on what is not other. In other words, on our own self, because we alone are not other than ourselves. So meditation on what is not other, and Bhagavan qualifies that, he says, Abhanaham aham ananya bhavam. Abhanaham aham means in which he is I. That is, when we have that conviction that God is nothing but that which is shining in us as I, with that conviction, once we understand that, what should we meditate on in order to meditate on God? Only on I, on ourselves. So Bhagavan says in that verse, Anya bhavatin abhanaham and Anya bhava mayundi para and natimnum utamamundi para. That Ananya bhava alone is the best of all. That means, in the context, what he means by best of all, it's the best of all kinds of meditation, it's the best of all practices of devotion, and it's quite simply the best of all spiritual practices.
You use a phrase which I'm very interested in, which is to attend to the self.
Yes. Well, rather than saying attend to the self, attend to oneself.
Attend to oneself.
Because the self it seems to be objectifying what we are.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's simply
What the self is.
What?
How do I know what the self is?
This is a catch-22. You can know what the self, you can know what you are only by attending to yourself. But in order to attend to yourself, you need to know what you actually are. But this is why Bhagavan called it self-investigation. Atma-vichara means self-investigation. When you start an investigation, you don't know what you're going to find at the end of it. If you knew the outcome of the investigation, there'd be no need to investigate. So we are trying to know what we actually are. We know I am, we know that I am, but we don't know what I am. Because we've now, our present self-awareness is mixed up with awareness of other things. Pure self-awareness is awareness of nothing other than ourselves. But now the pure self-awareness that we actually are is mixed up with awareness of this body, and I'm now aware of myself. I'm sitting here. What is sitting here? This body. So I'm identifying myself with the body. I'm experiencing this body as I. So the aim of the self-investigation is we're trying to separate, but this body is not always felt as I. When I'm dreaming, I'm experiencing some other body as I. When I'm sleeping, I'm not experiencing any body as I. So this body is an adjunct, it's something that comes and goes. So it's not what I actually am. So when we're trying to investigate ourselves, we are trying to be aware of ourselves in isolation from all all these adjuncts, all other things. So how to be aware of ourselves alone? We have to focus our attention on ourselves. But we are not an object. I can ask you, attend to this. It's clear it's an object. You can look at it through your eyes. You know how to attend to it. To attend to ourselves is something very, very much more subtle. But we can attend to anything we're aware of. And the one thing we are always aware of is ourself. So, but though we are always aware of ourself, the one thing we always overlook is our self-awareness. Why? Because we're so interested in the world. That self-awareness, that awareness I am, that is at the background of our experience. Whatever we're aware of, it is I who am aware of it. So that is the background of all our experiences. Bhagavan used to compare it to the screen in a cinema. All the pictures appear on the screen. The screen is self-awareness. All phenomena are like pictures appearing on that screen. But because it's such an interesting film we're watching, we forget about the screen and we're only interested in the story. Now we're trying to, but every analogy has its limitations. The screen and the pictures are both outside ourselves, but in this case, what we actually are, the pure self-awareness that we actually are, is not outside, it's within. Again, within, without, it's inside, outside, these are relative terms. What we are is inside, whatever is external to ourselves, what is anything that is other than ourselves, it's outside. So when we're attending to anything other than ourselves, our attention is going outwards. To turn our attention within, we have to turn it back towards ourself alone. So instead of, when we're attending to other things, we're self-aware, but we're negligently self-aware. What we need is to be attentively self-aware. So it's not that we are an object of our attention. So more than paying attention to ourselves, a more refined way of saying it is being self-attentive. It's a state of being. Attentive self-awareness. It is subtle, but it's something anyone can do if we're interested, because who is not aware of I? When there's not a moment that we're not aware of I. In waking and dream, we're aware of I, and we're aware of all these phenomena. In sleep, we're not aware of any phenomena, but we still know I slept. So the self-awareness continues even in sleep. When awareness of all phenomena comes to an end, whether the pictures are projected on it or not, the screen is still there. So sleep is like the state in which the screen remains without any pictures being projected on it. We are the screen. The basic self-awareness, our basic self-awareness, that is the screen. That is what we're trying to know.
But isn't myself going on a journey to try and find myself?
Yes, but when you say yourself is going on a journey, it is what we actually are is just pure self-awareness, just the awareness I am. But now we're not aware of ourselves just as I am. I'm aware of myself as Michael. Michael is the name of this body. So that mixed awareness, I am this body, that is what is called ego. And it is that limited I, but rises, grasping a body as itself, that is ego. The body isn't the ego, but I that says I am this body is ego. So that is what is going on a journey. But when we reach our destination, we will find we never left it. We are always that. But the journey is real so long as it's real, but I'm this body, which seems to be very, very real to me. If you come running at me with a knife, I'm going to run away. This body, I do all I can to preserve this body. more important than anything else in this world is looking after his body, because his body is me. So it seems. But though it seems so real to me now that I am this body, how come I'm able to drop it every night when I go to sleep? And in sleep I'm able to experience some other body as I. But whenever we rise as ego, we rise by projecting and taking a body as I. In sleep, in dream, we not only see a dream world, we see ourselves in that dream world as a body in that world. So it's only by the ego rises, projects a body, and then through the 5 senses of that body projects a world. And that ego is nothing but a mistaken awareness of ourself. An awareness of ourself as something other than what we actually are. Is that a little clearer now?
Well, I feel I agree with what you're saying.
Yes.
I still feel I want to experiment to find out more.
Yeah, we cannot understand this clearly without putting it into practice. If you've never ridden a bicycle, I can explain to you how to ride a bicycle, I can explain to you about balance, I can explain to you about center of gravity and all the other theories that are necessary to know how to ride a bicycle. But no one can learn to ride a bicycle without actually getting on a bicycle, falling many times, and eventually learning how to balance. It's exactly the same in this. We can learn how to investigate ourselves only by trying to investigate ourselves. It's a path of discovery. Any investigation is a discovery. Yes.
I very quickly came to understand that trying to talk about practice that and show us pointers she's going to do it.
Yes. Yes.
Just describe. But I've always starting out the physical symptom because I've come to a point where, with the practice, I don't ask any questions, there's nothing, I don't know how I turn my attention, I just do it.
Yeah.
But then, sort of 30 seconds later, my body goes, you're not breathing. So my breath stops, and then however long later, it suddenly screams, you're not breathing, and I get pushed straight out of it. And I'm now stuck. I've been stuck for a while.
It doesn't matter, just carry on, because the nature of the mind is to go outwards. But when we are turning our attention within, it's like holding our head underwater. How long can you hold your head underwater? You can't do it for indefinitely. You have to come up for air. Until we are ready to surrender ourselves completely, until we are ready to give up our life as an individual, as an ego, and our life as an ego, everything is entailed in our life as an ego. Only when we rise as an ego, we're aware of the world, we have so many, all that we are desire and are attached to is all, who desires it, who is attached to it, is ourself as ego. So, and the very nature of ego, Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Ulludunapadu, grasping form, it comes into existence. Grasping form, it stands. Grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes. Leaving one form, it grasps another form. If investigated, it takes flight. Such is this formless phantom ego. It has the ego has no form of its own, but it cannot seem to exist without grasping some form as I. So first it grasps its body as I, and then through this body it's grasping so many other forms. Forms means phenomena. So that is the nature, grasping is the nature of ego. When we try to turn our attention within, we're trying to grasp ourselves, but we are not a form. So the formless phantom ego, when it tries to grasp itself, because it's not a form it's grasping, but just awareness, the Bhagavan says, autum pilicum, it takes flight. That's a metaphorical way of saying it dissolves and disappears. But are we ready yet to dissolve and disappear forever? It's okay at night time. When we're tired after the day's work, we happily go to sleep, because we know very well we're going to wake up the next morning. But why? Because when we fall asleep, why our mind is not destroyed when we fall asleep? In sleep, what we experience is pure self-awareness. But we experience that pure self-awareness as a result of the subsidence of the mind. The mind has subsided because of exhaustion. Because all day long we've been active, thinking so many thoughts, we're tired. We need to recharge our batteries. So the mind subsides back into its source, which is the pure self-awareness we actually are. So in sleep we experience pure self-awareness, but we experience that as a result of the mind subsiding. So the mind subsides and then pure self-awareness. When we are practicing self-investigation, we, the mind or ego, are trying to experience that pure self-awareness. So the subsidence of mind that is brought about by self-investigation is a result of the pure self-awareness. So because it subsides as a result of the pure self-awareness, the mind is dissolved, is destroyed forever. But so when we fall asleep, we're perfectly safe. Because we first close our eyes, as it were, we first shut off. The mind shuts itself down, and then it's in sleep. So that pure self-awareness in sleep is not dangerous for the mind, because the mind is shut off. And the mind jumps up again. But the mind is afraid of experiencing that pure self-awareness here and now, because if it experiences it here and now, that will destroy it.
Does it feel like you're going through death?
It is. It's more literally death than death of the body. Because how many bodies have come and gone? Every night we dream, what happens to the body? That dream body is now dead. We're now in another body. One day this body is going to die, and dreams will continue. So the death of the body is no big deal. But death of the ego, that is the big deal.
Yeah, I think I've got to understand that it's not about duration, it can happen in an instant.
It can happen in an instant, exactly.
Caught up on, I need to be doing this for a long time.
You cannot do it for a long time. Well, you can do it for a long time, but you have to pay a price for it. And that is to give up your ego. When you give up your ego, you will be doing it eternally. But until you give up the ego will constantly be rising again.
I've already done that. It's already happened.
Yeah. Well, no. When it happens, nothing has ever happened. Because all happening is happening in the view of the ego, including even the ego's rising is happening in the view of the ego. These three states, waking, dream and sleep, as three different states, it's all in the view of the ego. So all happening is in the view of the ego. When we look within and see what we actually are, what is the ego? It's nothing but a false self-awareness. So it's not real. So when we see what we actually are, we'll see there never was an ego. Nothing has ever changed.
Yeah, I just feel feels like I just need to calm down.
Yeah. Though very little can be said about what the actual practice is, we have to learn the practice by practicing it. Having a clear understanding of Bhagavan's teachings, understanding the whole context in which the practice is done, makes the practice, makes us able to go deeper into the practice. That's why it's useful to be reading about Bhagavan's teaching, thinking about Bhagavan's teaching, because it's all one coherent whole, and it's all pointing to this one thing of turning our attention within. And the more clearly we understand Bhagavan's teaching, the easier it is. But we cannot understand Bhagavan's teachings clearly without this practice. Because this practice is like honing our power of attention, our intellect. The real meaning of intellect, we think of intellect as reasoning everything. Actually, the real meaning of intellect is seeing between. That is viveka, distinguishing. So that power of viveka is what is honed, what is refined by the more we turn our attention back towards ourselves, the more our power of attention, our power of discernment, of discrimination is refined.
It's because I was totally immersed for years in the teachings, and it came to a point, I was in the ashram for a good while, and I couldn't even look at them any longer.
Yeah.
And it was like a journey to get rid of the teachings, burn the books.
Yeah, but
now I seem to need to go back.
Exactly. It is said, sadhana is described as three things: sravana, manana, nididhyasana. Sravana means reading or hearing the teachings. We obviously need to do that, but we can read it, but how much do we understand when we first read it? We have to think deeply about it. We have to understand all the connections. And there's a lot more to Bhagavan's words than appears superficially. What he says is very, very deep. So how much meaning, how much depth we'll be able to see in his teaching depends on how much we've actually put it into practice. So the more we put it into practice, the more meaningful his words will be. The more meaningful his words will be, the more deeply we'll think about them. More deeply we think about them, more deeply we'll put them into practice. So these three are going to go on hand in hand.
I think he's trying to pick the words back up.
Yes. Yes. But not all the books are equal. Because there are a lot of books which record what Bhagavan said to answers. Firstly, the recordings often aren't very accurate because someone was recording from memory. So people, if you record something from memory, if you go away after this talk and try to record all that was said here, all the questions and all the answers, you will only firstly, as much as you can remember, and even what you remember will be what you understood. So if you don't understand correctly what someone is asking or what I'm answering, what you record will not be accurate. So most of the questions and answers are like that. That's one problem with them. They're not accurate recordings. They're accurate recordings of what the recorder, the person recording it, understood at that time. Secondly, a lot of the people who came to Bhagavan, they weren't deep spiritual seekers. They came and they asked some question of often if you read talks or something, someone asks a question and Bhagavan gives an answer, and then you want to ask some other question, but that person goes off onto something else. Very, very seldom has it been recorded a deep, like what Shiva Prakashan Pillai, Bhagavan was able to make it all into an essay, Who Am I? Because Shiva Prakashan Pillai's questions were deep and they were following on from what Bhagavan said. So it was made into a coherent exposition. But if you take any dialogue from talk and try to make it into an exposition, it's not, because people are jumping from here, there, because their mind isn't going deep.
No, I could never really handle that, but it's like a quick piece of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there are good, nice things here and there, but you have to search around for them. And Bhagavan answers according to people's level. Not everyone is ready to understand his teachings very deeply, so he has to modify them to suit that person's level of understanding, that person's willingness to grasp.
you spoke about awakeness, sleep, and dream.
Yes.
And yeah, we all experience about awakeness and dream.
Yes.
But as you said, like, we also exist in sleep.
Yes.
How do we experience that I exist in sleep?
Do you know you existed? Do you know that you slept?
But the experience is, we don't experience that.
You do experience it. Aren't you not able, what's the difference between sleep and dream?
Dream is like still the same thing without.
Yeah. In dream you're aware of phenomena. In sleep you're not aware of any phenomena. But you're aware of having been in a state in which you were not aware of any phenomena. But the problem is, because we associate awareness with awareness of phenomena, in a state where there's no awareness of phenomena, we think there's no awareness. But we are aware of that absence of awareness of phenomena. Awareness of phenomena is the nature of the mind or ego. Whereas what we actually are is pure self-awareness, which is not, there's no, in pure self, what we experience in sleep is pure self-awareness according to Bhagavan. And we don't, if we think a little deeply about it, yes, we are very clearly aware. If supposing sleep was a state of total non-awareness, we would be aware of only two states, waking and dream. And we would not be aware of any gap between these two. But we are aware, not only that there are two states, we're very clearly aware there are three states. We're aware because we experience that third state. Even though we think there was no awareness in that state, there was no awareness of phenomena in that state because there were no phenomena there to be aware of. But there was awareness. But that awareness, from the perspective of the ego in waking or dream, the awareness we experience in sleep seems to be blackness, darkness, void, sunya, whatever we say. That is only from the perspective of the mind, because the mind wasn't present there, but we were present there. If we could be aware now of what we were aware of in sleep, that would dissolve the mind here and now. So the rising of the mind has clouded over the pure awareness that we experienced in sleep. So from the perspective of this mind, we cannot recall, we know we slept. We know we were in a state where there were no phenomena, but we can only describe it we can only conceive it in negative terms. But if we turn our attention back towards ourselves more and more keenly, we will eventually come to a point where we will experience that pure self-awareness here and now in the waking state. Whereupon, that instant we experience that, the ego will be dissolved. And there, because these three states, waking, dream, and sleep, exist only for ego will, the three states will be dissolved along with it. And what will then remain is what is sometimes described as the eternal sleep, or the wakeful sleep, Jagrat Sushupti. It's neither this nor that, it's what we actually are.
So is it like the ego doesn't exist during sleep?
No.
It doesn't exist.
Only you exist in sleep.
Okay.
Because the ego doesn't exist, nothing else exists, according to Bhagavan. We all believe. I was sleeping in bed, so my body was there, the bed was there, the world was there. I wake up in the morning and turn on the news and I hear that there was all the news, all the terrible things that happened in the world overnight. I asked people, was the world still there when I was sleeping? And they say, oh yes, I was doing a night shift at that time, so definitely the world was there. We are calling upon the world whose existence is in question during sleep to bear witness that it existed in sleep. But if other people, if I tell you, yes, I was awake when you were asleep, so definitely I am the world, rest of the world was definitely there when you were asleep. What is the value of my evidence? Bhagavan said, calling on people, on other people, to bear witness to the existence of a world in your sleep is like calling on a thief to bear witness to his innocence in court. Of course the thief is going to say, yes, I was innocent. Of course the world is going to tell you, yes, I existed in your sleep. But you weren't aware of it, but you were aware of yourself. So since you were aware of yourself but not aware of the world, why should you believe the world? Let the world come to you in sleep and tell you it exists. Why it comes to you only in waking and dream and tells you it exists? And also another thing, the world but in dream that tells you I was existing in your sleep, and the world in waking that tells you I was existing in, they're two different worlds. So which world is to be believed? Now we believe this world, but in dream we believe the dream world.
For example, like I sleep for sometimes when I fall asleep and I wake up, I couldn't realize like I slept for a long time because there were no disturbance and no.
Yes, yes.
So I didn't happen what I don't realize what happened during that time.
Yes, nothing happened during that time.
So it is like,
Even that time didn't happen during the time. The time comes into existence only when you rise in a state of waking or dream. Time is present in waking and dream, but not always the same time scale. Sometimes you may just doze off for 5 minutes and dream, but the dream can take seems to be a year of events have happened.
is that the highest state that we need to achieve during wakeness and dreamness? Is that where we need to?
But yeah, the highest state, but it's not really the highest state. The only real state is the state of pure self-awareness, which we actually are. That is, only that pure self-awareness remains in sleep. But that pure self-awareness is here and now, but it's concealed by the mind which is aware of other things, the ego which is aware of other things. So we've just got to see what is here and now. And it's not higher or lower, it's what alone exists. Higher or lower is all true from the perspective of the mind, but in, out, higher, lower, all these differences exist only when we rise as ego. Sorry, the purpose of the world, the purpose of mind and world. Bhagavan didn't say a purpose. He said, now it seems to us there is a mind and there is a world. That is what seems to be the case. Bhagavan said that isn't actually the case. The mind is nothing, the mind or the term mind can be a little bit ambiguous because we use the term mind to refer to thoughts in general. All the mental activity we call mind. We also use the mind to refer to the subject who's aware of all those thoughts and mental activity. So the mind in the sense of the subject, the one who is aware, that is ego. So this ego is nothing but a wrong awareness of ourself. As ego, I'm aware of myself as I am Michael. This I am is true. Michael is an adjunct. He comes and he goes. Michael is the name of this body. This body I experience in waking. In dream I experience some other body. In both cases now I experience just as real as this body is I now, the body I experience in dream as I is equally real. So, but since I experience myself as one body at one time, another body at another time, neither of these bodies can be what I actually am. Because whatever we can experience ourselves in the absence of cannot be ourself. So the only thing that we are constantly aware of is of the basic self-awareness I am. I was asleep, I was dreaming, I am awake. It's the same I in all three cases. So that is the fundamental reality. But in waking and dream, we don't just, in sleep we just experience ourselves as I am. We're not aware of anything other than our mere existence. But in waking and dream, we are not aware of ourselves just as I am. I'm aware of myself as I am Michael, I am this body. So these are adjuncts. They are mixed up with this self-awareness. So what the ego is nothing but a mixed self-awareness. And because of the adjuncts with which it's mixed are not what it actually is, it is a false self-awareness. I'm now aware of myself as this body, but this body is not what I actually am. So ego is nothing but a false self-awareness. According to Bhagavan, if we investigate this false self-awareness called ego, if we investigate ourselves keenly enough, we will be aware of ourselves as we actually are. Thereby this false self-awareness will be dissolved. A simple analogy. You and I are walking along a path in the half light. Something is lying on the path. You see it and think it's a snake and say, oh, be careful, we have to be careful, there's a snake there. I happen to walk that way already, so I know I saw it there in the daylight, it's just a rope. So I tell you, no, it's not a snake, it's just a rope. And you say, no, it looks like a snake, are you sure? I said, no, I'm sure, I saw it in daylight, it's a snake. Yeah, I mean, it's a rope. And you're still a bit hesitant. I said, okay, I can understand, it does look very like a snake, and natural for you not to entirely trust me. Just look at it a little carefully. And seeing that it doesn't move, you pluck up a little courage and you go a bit more closer to it. When you get close enough and see it carefully, clearly, you see that it's just a rope. The snake that it seemed to be, as soon as you see it's a rope, the snake disappears. Not only the snake disappears, you know there never was a snake there in the first place. So the mind or ego is like that. It's a mistaken awareness of ourselves. When we see ourselves as we actually are, it's not that the mind becomes the snake doesn't become a rope. But there never was a snake there in the first place. The snake is nothing but a wrong awareness, a mistaken awareness, a misperception of the rope. Likewise, this ego or mind is nothing but a misperception of ourselves. We're aware of ourselves as something other than what we actually are. So if we look at ourselves very keenly, very closely, we'll see what we actually are. This ego or mind will be dissolved forever. So asking questions about this ego or mind, what is its purpose, how it came into existence, these are all, this is like asking what is the purpose of, why was the barren woman's child born? Or how was her child born? Obviously, she's a barren woman, she has no child. So we're asking about a non-existent thing. Any questions we ask about the ego or mind, we're asking about something that doesn't actually exist. We can give all sorts of answers. The purpose of life is to know God. The purpose of life is to love God. The purpose of life is to be good to humanity, to serve the human race. We can say all these things. But all these assume that there is actually an ego or mind. So long as we don't investigate it, there seems to be. So long as you don't look carefully enough at the snake, it seems to be a snake. So why the snake is there? What is its purpose? Is it here just to frighten us? We can ask all sorts of questions. How did it come here? It looks bigger, but we don't have such big snakes in the UK. So has it escaped from a zoo? Which zoo did it escape from? Is it a dangerous one? We can ask all sorts of questions about it. And all these questions seem very important, so long as we mistake it to be a snake. But if we look at it carefully and see that it's a rope, all our questions about it are meaningless.
And the physical world, which I mean, unless I'm sort of deluding myself, of course, which is quite possible, there seem to be moments or occasions or episodes when the ego is quiescent, when there is a simple awareness but the world doesn't actually disappear.
So long as that which is aware of the world, that which is aware of phenomena, is ego. Our real nature is pure self-awareness. In pure self-awareness means it's awareness of nothing other than itself.
So this is only possible to experience while there is embodiment.
Yeah, deep sleep is the only occasion when we experience it, so long as we are rising as ego. As soon as we rise as ego, we cease to be aware of the pure self. We are still aware of the pure self-awareness, but we're not aware of it as pure self-awareness. We're aware of it as, instead of being aware of ourselves as just I am, I'm aware of myself as I am Michael. I'm still aware of I am, but not as I actually am. I'm aware of myself as something other than I actually am. Only when I'm aware of myself as I am this body does any world seem to exist. In waking, I experience this body as I. In dream, I experience some other body as I. In both states, there's a corresponding world. But a body is always part of a world. So because I experience this body as I, what is actually real is only I, is only myself. But because this body seems to be what I am, seems to be myself, because I am real, this body seems to be real. And this body is part of this world. So the whole world seems to be real. So long as we are experiencing this body as I, the world seems to be real. In dream, now we say, oh, dream, it was just a mental projection, it wasn't real. But while we were dreaming, it seemed to be real. The body in dream seems to be ourself at that time. If someone came at us with a knife, we would have run away, we'd have been afraid. I mean, we have frightening dreams, don't we? Because we feel threatened by some monster or some person chasing us or something. It all seems real so long as the dream is occurring, because that dream body seems to be I, because I is real, the reality that is I is superimposed on the body, and because the body is part of the world, the whole world seems to be real. So as long as we are dreaming, it seems to be just as real as this world.
There is also the condition of lucid dreaming, where it's known to be a dream, it's known that the body in the dream is not the real body.
Well, what is called lucid dreaming, when we say we know it's a dream, that's an idea that occurs in the dream. Even now, but if we are still not aware of ourselves as we actually are, even though we think that I'm in a lucid dream, we are still mistaking ourselves to be a body in that dream, because if we weren't experiencing ourselves as a body, we wouldn't be aware of the dream. So the lucid dream it's something that people make a lot of, but actually, if you think of it, the so-called knowledge that it's a dream is nothing but an idea. I can equally well think of this world as a dream. Sometimes, even in waking state, the world seems very dreamlike, doesn't it? Things happen, you can hardly believe what's happening because it seems so unreal, the situations we sometimes find ourselves in. So the idea that this is a world, this is a dream, it's been occurring to people for thousands of years. I mean, philosophers have been asking themselves whether this world is real or a dream for thousands of years. Shakespeare writes about this world is a dream rounded off by sleep. I mean, it's there in all literature and everything, because it's a fundamental doubt. How can we, by what means can we distinguish waking from dream? Both seem to be real while we experience them.
Can this pure awareness, though, not, be in the world and know itself at the same time?
Pure awareness means awareness of nothing. Awareness of phenomena is not pure awareness. Pure awareness is just awareness. in order to be aware of phenomena, we have to be aware. So the basic awareness is just awareness, not awareness of phenomena. Awareness of phenomena is something that comes in waking and dream, disappears in sleep. Because it appears and disappears, it's not real. The basic awareness, which is not awareness of something, but just awareness, do you understand what I mean by transitive awareness and intransitive awareness? When we talk about verbs, you understand the distinction between a transitive verb and an intransitive verb.
I'm following what you're saying.
Yeah, so a transitive verb is a verb that takes an object. An intransitive verb is a verb but doesn't take an object. We can use these terms to distinguish intransitive awareness from transitive awareness. Awareness of phenomena is transitive. We're aware of things. Whereas the pure awareness is intransitive awareness. It's not awareness of anything, it's just awareness. That is the base reality.
Yes, I fully understand that it's the base reality.
Yes.
And in this base reality,
yes,
kind of
but
manifestation.
There is some kind of manifestation. But this manifestation exists in the view of whom? It exists in the view of ego. So the first thing that rises, the first rising is ego. First, whenever we're aware of any manifestation, we are aware of ourselves as part of that manifestation. So now I'm aware of myself. This whole world has manifested. Not only has the world manifested, I've manifested in this world as this body. So this awareness, I am this body, is the base of awareness of phenomena. Yeah. There is never a time when we're aware of phenomena without being aware of ourselves as one of those phenomena.
Is that true?
Well, have you ever experienced anything where, have you ever experienced people talk about a disembodied state. People sometimes, for example, near-death experience, people sometimes describe, but they have an accident and clinically they are supposedly dead. And the doctors are trying to revive them, and people have written books about these things, but a very common thing that people who have such experiences say, they say that they're aware of themselves looking down. They're sort of as if they're floating up in the ceiling, and they're looking down and they see the doctors and nurses trying to resuscitate them, and suddenly they feel pulled back into the body and they're resuscitated. People take that to be a state of disembodiment. But it is not a state of disembodiment because they are aware of themselves in a certain locality. In order to be aware of oneself in a place in space, you must be something in that space. So the awareness is limited. It may not be a physical body. I mean, it may not be a visible body, a body that can be seen by others, but there's a subtle type of body in which they are existing. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a locality in space. So we always, when we experience phenomena, we always experience from a certain point of view. There's no experience of phenomena from no point of view. So we are part of this manifestation from which we are seeing everything. How we are part of this manifestation? By being a body in this manifest world. This is the nature of how we cannot be aware of ourselves, of anything other than ourselves, without ourselves being separated from those other things. In a state of complete oneness, there is no separation, no multiplicity. Multiplicity and oneness are opposites. So what we are seeking, is it oneness or is it multiplicity? People think you can see all as one. But so long as you're seeing all, you're seeing many. Many and one are not compatible. Either it's many or it's one.
if we go back to the analogy of the film and the screen,
Yes.
a cinema technician will always know that the screen is the reality there.
Yes.
The screen is what is there,
Yes.
and the film is just
Yes.
on it. And there can be an experience of manifestation without a subject-object relationship. The manifestation can be seen as appearing in awareness, not out there.
Yes, but to whom does it appear?
Awareness.
So awareness is there, the subject, and the manifestation is the object. So long as you're aware of something, there's subject and there's object. That basic duality is there.
It's not experienced as subject and object there.
You may not have the idea that it's a subject and object, but so long as awareness is aware of something, the awareness is the subject, and what it's aware of is the object.
This also applies when awareness is aware of awareness.
When awareness is aware of awareness, that is self-awareness. That is, there are no two there. There's only one.
Conjunction.
Sorry?
Isn't there a conjunction between the two?
Between which two?
Well, if the terminology used is a true self and a false self, but if the true self is reflecting and it's perceived by itself, there's a conjunction of that which is arising and that which is eternally there.
Well, in a sense, there is a conjunction, in the sense that when you're aware of yourself as I am this body, that I am this body is conjoined with I am. Because I am now we have this mixed awareness, I am this body. In this mixed awareness, what is real is I am. What is unreal is this body, which is something that comes and goes. So the ego is never separate, is never other than our real nature. Just like the snake is never other than a rope. But it seems to be something other. So long as you see a snake, you don't see the rope. You don't see its real nature. So long as we see ourselves as a person, we don't see our real nature. But we are never actually away from our real nature because we are always that.
So it must recognize itself.
Our real nature, you mean? Our real nature always recognizes itself. But our real nature is aware of itself as that, as one. It's not aware of itself as many. That which is aware of multiplicity, is ego.
Yes, you can use that terminology, but the fact is there is a recognition.
Who recognizes it? The ego recognizes, or our real nature recognizes?
Reflective. I'm not quite sure who the I is there, to be honest. I don't think there is an I, but there is a conjunction between a recognition of the seer and what's seen.
So long as there is what is seen is something other than so long as what is seen means phenomena. So long as there are phenomena, the phenomena there's always the subject-object duality there. There's always a separation. In waking and dream, we're always aware of multiplicity. There's self and other. Some people imagine that in the state of self-realization, you will be aware of the world, but you're aware of it as yourself. That means you're aware of yourself as multiplicity, which is not actually, that is not actually the experience. The state of pure self-aware, of the state of self-knowledge, is a state where one is aware of oneself as one actually is, and what we actually are is one, not many.
This duality wouldn't apply to a jnani.
For a jnani,
it's all one.
For jnani, in a sense it's all one, in that there's nothing other than one. But it's not that many things are one, it is that there is only one.
He is everything.
Yes.
He is.
No, he is everything in the sense that let's leave aside he, because that's a bit misleading. Again, we're bringing, let's say it. It is the only thing. As the only thing, it is everything. In that sense, it is everything, but it's not the everything in the sense of many things. It's the only one thing.
Yes. The many things are all it.
So,
The many things
yes.
are it.
But in whose view do many things exist? In the view of the one, only one exists. In the view of ego, many things exist.
But the ego's disappeared. There is no ego.
So there is no manyness. There is only the one.
So you mean to say that Nāṉ doesn't see separation at all? Then how does it function? How does it function?
Because we talk about the jnani functioning because we take the jnani to be the body. We see this body, Bhagavan, we think this he's a jnani, he's seeing the world just like us, he's answering our questions, he's cutting the vegetables, he's writing verses, he's doing all these things. We think, because we mistake this body to be Bhagavan, we think he's seeing the world just as we are. But Bhagavan says, I am not this body.
So what you're saying is we're projecting a picture, not him.
Yeah, exactly. That's why Bhagavan said the guru means the jnana guru, is like the elephant, is like the lion in an elephant's dream. There's a belief in India that elephants are so afraid of lions that if an elephant dreams of a lion, the elephant will wake up out of fright. That is used as an analogy because people see the guru as a person. We think the guru is also seeing the world, also seeing multiplicity like us. But Bhagavan says, Guru is just that pure awareness which is not aware of anything else. In our view, the Guru seems to be a person. That is like the lion appearing in the elephant's dream. The lion is actually unreal. So also the name and form, the body, the person that we take to be Guru is unreal. But the lion brings about the awakening. Brings about the real awakening, though itself is unreal. In other words, the name and form of the Guru, the person that the Guru seems to be is unreal. But it brings about the real awakening because what is appearing outwardly in the form of Guru is nothing but our own self, which is just pure self-awareness. And it loves us as itself. And so it appears because we're looking outwards, it appears outwardly in a form to tell us to look back within. And when we look back within, we will see that we are not a person, nor was Guru ever a person.
Bhagavan basically is just one of the characters in our dream.
Exactly. But
telling us, wake up.
Yeah. Exactly. Whereas all the other characters are in this dream are saying, see me, see this world. Bhagavan is saying, don't see me, don't see the world, see yourself.
Does the Guru not experience pain, pleasure, let's say, dental toothache?
Bhagavan, the body that we take to be Bhagavan, had sarcoma, which is a cancer that grows on the nerve. It's the most painful cancer. And they operated, they cut it off. First few operations, there wasn't even anesthesia, only in the later ones. But when people asked Bhagavan about it, was there pain? He said, yes, there was pain, but it's not other than me.
Is it simply
But we are talking about Bhagavan now as if Bhagavan is a person. So when people ask Bhagavan, is there pain? He said yes, because he knows those people are seeing him as a person. But actually, if we understand his teachings properly, we should understand that he is not the person, he is not the experiencer of that pain.
Okay, so basically, if I understood this correctly, that the identification with the body is not there, so therefore, they're affected by what the body is undergoing. Is that correct?
Not only, yes, there's no identification with the body, and because there's no identification with the body, there is no body. The body seems to exist. Now, all phenomena appear because we experience ourselves as a body. When we cease to experience ourselves as a body, in dream, we experience ourselves as a dream body. As soon as the dream comes to an end, that identification with the dream body is broken. Therefore, the dream world disappears. This world seems to exist now so long as we're identified with this body. When we fall asleep or begin to dream, our identification with this body is cut. This world immediately disappears.
Well, I mean, he could still interact like a normal human being.
Because we take him to be a person, we take him to be a mind, we take him to be a body and a mind, we take him just to be like us. Bhagavan has written one verse, just like a person sleeping in a cart is not aware whether the cart is moving or standing still or whether the bullocks have been unyoked. The jnani who is sleeping in the body is unaware of the activity, the non-activity, or the nishta, the samadhi-like state. All these differences don't exist in the view of the jnani, because the jnani doesn't experience itself as body.
Yeah, so this is the fact that they don't identify with the body, that they don't actually feel the body's pain.
Yes, but because when we talk about they, we're talking about Bhagavan as if he's a person. As a person, Bhagavan experienced pain. When his thigh brushed against a bush in which there was a hornet's nest, he felt sorry for the hornets because he had disturbed them, so he let them sting his thigh. He was fully aware of that pain. As a person, I'm talking about. But the Bhagavan I'm talking about now is the Bhagavan who exists in our view. That is not the real Bhagavan. The real Bhagavan is the pure awareness that is ever existing in our heart as I.
Right, yeah.
So we cannot know Bhagavan as he is so long as we know ourselves, so long as we don't know ourselves as we are. When we know ourselves as we are, we'll find Bhagavan is nothing other than ourselves. We were never a body, Bhagavan was never a body. There was only ever one.
So the real Bhagavan, is it correct to say the real Bhagavan is just beyond description?
Beyond description, yes.
Absolutely, you
Yes.
can't say anything about it.
The only truth you can say about the real Bhagavan is I am. You can't, if you say I am Bhagavan, that's wrong. You can only say I am, because that's all that Bhagavan experienced. Bhagavan once said, all you know so much, and you come to me expecting me to know things. I don't know anything. I only know I am.
Yes. What is that?
So we know more than Bhagavan. But our knowledge is ignorance.
Wrong, yeah.
Bhagavan says in verse 13 of Uludunaptu, Nānavam jnanam ajnanamam. Awareness of multiplicity is ignorance.
Our knowledge is wrong.
Yes. There is only one real knowledge, and that is I am.
I remember when I first came across this I am, it was in the Bible, written in capital letters, I am that I am, somewhere.
You didn't come across I am before that?
Well, not to notice it. I mean,
Who didn't notice it? I didn't notice it.
no, that's a significant step, but I was puzzled by it. I am that I am.
Yeah.
It's very puzzling to me.
Yes. I think only Bhagavan has made the meaning of that clear.
Yeah. I'd never, well, of course, I've never heard of Bhagavan. It was
Yeah.
when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know.
Michael, so from 1896 to 1950, so people thought Bhagavan was here. Just for Bhagavan here, and all these people.
Yes.
Sri Prakash Pillai,
Yeah. Yeah.
and in their view, there was Bhagavan.
Yes.
And Bhagavan kept telling all these people,
This is not me.
this is not me. This is in your view.
Yes.
So, in their view, when they get up in the morning as admitting, say for example, if I was there,
Yes.
I would say, admitting, and I'm seeing Bhagavan.
Yes.
Okay? And then he is writing, and he's cutting vegetables, and he's cooking, and he's eating, and all that thing. So it was all fabrication, like I am knitting, was a fabrication of all the other knittings.
Yes.
And they Bhagavan here.
Yes.
Am I
Well, when you dream, you see many people in the dream. And you see yourself as one of the people in the dream. So long as you see yourself as one of those people in the dream, all those other people are equally real. One of those other people in this dream was Bhagavan. But there's a difference between Bhagavan and all those other people, because Bhagavan is the person who has appeared in our dream to tell us, don't look at me, look at yourself. Look at yourself and you will see what you actually are.
So that means, and then he had, so basically what he did in the process of this time,
Yeah.
he wrote, who do not do and for
Yes, yeah.
all the people.
Yes.
And just say, oi, go look at yourself. Don't
Exactly.
worry about all these and what I'm doing here.
Yeah, exactly. But the sole purpose of Guru appearing in human form is to tell us, look at yourself, see yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
But isn't another method or approach to know yourself also to just simply love everyone as yourself?
How can you love everyone as yourself when you see everyone as other than yourself? In order to love all as yourself, you must see all as yourself. In order to see all as yourself, you must see only yourself. Because so long as you see all, so long as you see many, you're not seeing yourself as you actually are. When you see yourself as you actually are, you'll see you alone exist. There are no many. That is equivalent to knowing all is yourself and loving all as yourself. So Bhagavan, why Bhagavan had so much love? His love was equal to everyone. He equally loved those people who put court cases against him. He loved when there were rajas and kings came to him, government officials came to him, all sorts of people came to him, peasants came to him, Dogs came to him, cats came to him, snakes came to him, monkeys came to him. He saw all, he had equal love for all. Why? Because he didn't see them as all, he saw them as himself. But we cannot conceive that state of seeing everything as ourself so long as we see everything. Because the state in which we see everything as ourself, we see only ourself. We don't see everything. But for us, all this everything seems very real, doesn't it?
There is someone asked Bhagavan a question. How should I treat others?
Yes.
Then Bhagavan said there are no others.
Yes. Exactly. And Bhagavan also said, how can we comprehend the state of one who knows no other? Nothing other than oneself. We cannot, it's beyond our mind. But we can experience that state. We cannot conceive it, because what is it that conceives? It's mind. And that is beyond mind. Where the mind ceases, there the real experience remains.
And also, how we treat others, in this sort of simplicity is not in our hands anyways. That's kind of unfolding in its own.
Well, yes and no. This is a question Barry was asking me just before we started talking now. Bhagavan has said all that we are to experience in this life is predetermined. It's according to prarabdha, to destiny. It's the fruit of our past karmas, which have been selected for us to experience in this lifetime. So we cannot experience anything that we're not destined to experience, and we cannot avoid experiencing what we are destined to experience. So in that sense, everything that happens is according to destiny. And in order for us to experience our destiny, we have to do certain actions. So those actions that are necessary by mind, speech and body for us to experience our destiny, we'll be made to do. But that doesn't mean that everything we do we're made to do by destiny, because just like this destiny is the fruit of our past karmas. Which past karmas is it the destiny of? The agamyas. Agamya is the actions that we do by our will. So even while we're experiencing prarabdha, we are still acting according to our will. Certain things, for example, I want to become a doctor. In order to become a doctor, I have to study very hard. It happens to be my destiny to become a doctor. So I study hard and I become a doctor. But that happens according to destiny. But at the same time, I want to be a doctor. So what I want and what is destined to happen are in sync there. But I may not want to be a doctor, I may want to be a rich businessman. And it may not be my destiny to be a rich businessman. So however much I may want to be a rich businessman, no matter how much I may try, I will never be one. So we have that freedom to want and freedom to try to do things. So when it comes to how we treat others, we have to take it, we are responsible for all our actions. Those certain actions we may be made to do according to destiny. In order for us to experience our destiny, we should accept responsibility for all our actions, because even those actions that we are destined to do, in most cases, we do what we want. We do it not only because of destiny, but also because we want to do it. So until we have completely surrendered our will, we are responsible, we have to take responsibility for the actions we do. And we cannot surrender our will. We can, to some extent, lessen our desires, lessen our likes and dislikes, our attachments, our fears, our hopes, our cares, our concerns. We can lessen these to some extent the practice of surrender, by the practice of trusting in God, leaving all these things to God, we cannot, but so long as there's an ego, it will have a will of its own. And so long as there's a will, that will also drive us to do actions. So if we want to surrender our will completely, we have to surrender ourself, whose will it is. In other words, we have to surrender the ego. So surrender cannot be complete until we've surrendered the ego. And because the ego is nothing but a wrong awareness of ourself, in order to surrender the ego, we need to know what we actually are. Because how can I give up myself? I can give up everything else, I can't give up myself. Unless I myself am a wrong, what I take to be I can give up what I take to be myself, which is this wrong awareness, I am this body. In order to give up that, I need to investigate myself. And when I investigate myself, I not only give up this ego, I give up all the ego's desires along with it. That's why in verse 26 of Uludunaptu, Bhagavan says, investigating what it is giving up everything. So when we've investigated the ego and known what we really are, there is no everything. There's only one thing, which is the pure self-awareness that we actually are. Or what Bhagavan describes in verse 27 of Upadesha Undiyar as Anadi, Ananta, Akhanda, Satchidananda. Anadi means beginningless. Ananta means endless, limitless, infinite. So it has no beginning, no end, no limit. It's infinite. Akhanda means unbroken. That means it's undivided. It's just one. And Satchidananda. Satchidananda, though it's a compound of three words, Sat meaning being, Chit meaning awareness, Ananda meaning happiness. These are not three different things. Sat is Chit, Chit is Sat, Ananda is Chit and Sat. They're three descriptions of one thing. And that is what we actually are.
So let's say, after awakening or self-realization, when the ego disappears completely, at that point, there will be no one to say, I have realized.
No.
There will be no such thing as...
No.
I woke up or...
No. Because that which...
Because that would be only the ego could say,
yes.
I have realized.
Yes. That is why there's a saying in Tamil, Vindava Kandale, Kandava Vindale, Vindava Kandale. Those who have seen do not say, those who say have not seen. And in one verse in Uludunapadu, Bhagavan says, to say I have known myself or I have not known myself is ground for ridicule. So to say either is ridiculous, because what we actually are is always aware of itself, and it doesn't need to say, well, there's no one to whom to say, I know myself.
So even though there might be some people approaching us after the actual process happens?
No, they can't. They're
only wonders, but in their point of view, they might see us,
yes,
someone who actually has got something which they do not have.
Yes, like we see Bhagavan as someone who is...
We still see them as... Someone asked me a question like, how did you do it? They'll be only... I haven't done anything.
Yeah, that is why people like Murugan have said, I didn't do anything, Bhagavan just swallowed me. So, yeah. But even then, because he's a poet, he sang like that. Otherwise, it's to who is there to say that to?
So, upon awakening, all the debates, all the questioning, everything vanishes.
Everything vanishes, including the one who was aware of everything before. And what remains is what always is, which is just the one pure, infinite self-awareness. which is infinite happiness, infinite satisfaction. Yes?
Michael, did I read somewhere that one of Bhagwan's devotees passionately wanted to see Bhagwan as he really was, and actually when they looked, there was nothing there?
There are all sorts of stories like that, yes, maybe quite possibly.
Right.
But even that, to see nothing there, it's not seeing Bhagavan as he actually is.
Right.
Because when we see Bhagavan as he actually is, there's no there, no nothing. There's only one thing.
There is one small story I read. There used to be a famous Sufi saint. Sufi is sort of Muslim.
Yeah.
Saint used to be there. And someone went and asked him, how can I get rid of my thoughts? Then that Sufi saint didn't say anything. We went to a pillar, caught hold of it, and started shouting, oh, give me up, leave me alone. So he actually caught hold of the pillar, and he was shouting, oh, leave me alone. So then that guy got the message.
Yes.
It is you who have caught the
thoughts. Yes. Yeah.
Then you want them to go. So
yes.
you have to literally give it up.
Yeah. The whole problem is we're not yet ready to let go. We're not yet ready to leave everything. We are still attached to all this. Though this world is giving us so much trouble, though we're never perfectly satisfied, we're still not ready to let go. But if we want to be satisfied, we have to let go of everything, and then we will find that infinite satisfaction is our real nature.
When people go to Maharishi asking questions, he says it's very difficult to express in words or writing. You just come and sit next to me for a few minutes, then it will be automatically transmitted. Like a cough.
No, but Bhagavan, people attribute a lot of things. Say Bhagavan said a lot of things. Bhagavan never said, "Come to me." Bhagavan said, "Go within." When people tried to worship Bhagavan, he would reject it. When Janaki Mata fell at Bhagavan's feet, and he asked her, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm holding the feet of my Guru." He said, "These feet are not the feet of your Guru. This body is perishable. If you cling to these feet, you'll be disappointed, because this body is going to go away one day. The real feet of a Guru is what is shining in your eye. Cling to those feet. Those feet alone will save you." So Bhagavan is always turning our attention away from him back towards ourselves. Whereas there are people nowadays who claim to be devotees of Bhagavan, who say, I am self-realized. You cannot get self-realization without being in the presence of a living Guru. In other words, they're saying, "Come to me." They're saying the exact opposite of Bhagavan. Bhagavan says, "Go to you." They say, "Come to me."
And also, when someone asks how to know the Nāṇ Ār, he says you should to ask yourself, self-realize and go to satsangs, etc. But also you should also have Guru's grace to know the Atma-vichara. So how do we get this Guru's grace?
Bhagavan said, people accuse God or Guru of being not gracious. But Guru is always gracious, because he's always shining in us as I. The one who is not gracious is ourself, because we ignore him. We look out. He is in us as I. We are looking outside. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said another thing. In order to know God, you need the grace of three people. You need the grace of God, you need the grace of Guru, and you need the grace of Jiva, your own grace. Grace of God is always abundant. Grace of Guru is always abundant. But grace that is lacking is your own grace. The sun is shining there in the sky. We say, I can't see the sun, I can't see the sun. Look up, it's there. If you look at it, it's there. So the only problem, what is Guru's grace? Guru is our own self. Our nature is to love ourselves. So as our own real nature, as our own actual self, Guru always loves us as himself, itself. So that infinite love that our real nature has for itself is what is called grace. That is what is drawing us back within. That is what manifests outside as Guru. So that grace is always there in our heart. All that is required is we have to turn towards it.
We don't have to go in search of any gurus.
We don't have to. The whole purpose of a guru outside is to tell you to go within. When we come to a guru who's told you go within, if we go, oh, but I must have a guru, I must have a guru. Bhagavan never recommended people go in search of guru. He said the sole purpose of guru is to turn you back to yourself, turn you within. There are some verses in Ulidu Naptu Anubandham, the first 5 verses are about the greatness of Satsanga. Those are all verses Bhagavan translated into from Sanskrit into Tamil on different occasions. But people make too much of this. Bhagavan himself said, what is Satsanga? Satsanga means association with Sat. Sat is what actually exists. You are that. So Atma-sanga is the only real Satsanga. But people prefer something outside. So people attach a lot of importance to the external type of Satsanga. External Satsanga is not going to help you. When Guru comes to tell you to turn within, if you continue clinging to the outward form of Guru, and don't do what he says, then we're defeating the purpose. Bhagavan says in Nāṉ Ār, those who have come into who have fallen prey to the glance, who have come into the glance of the Guru's grace, will never be forsaken. Just like a prey that has fallen into the jaws of a tiger can never escape. So we can never escape. We'll certainly be saved. But he adds at the end of that, Eninum Guru Katya Varipati Tabarada Nadika Vendum. That means, nevertheless, it is necessary to follow without fail the path shown by Guru. So that's what's important. So there are, in the sea there are always lots of sharks. In the sea of this spiritual business that's going on in the world, there are plenty of big sharks, and those sharks will tell you, come to me, I will give you salvation. You must be in my presence in order to be uplifted. All these are sharks. Those sharks haven't come to help you, they come to help themselves. They want your praise, they want your money, they want all these things from you. Whereas Bhagavan doesn't want anything from us except ourselves.
So the only
and that's the one thing we're not ready to give yet.
The only purpose of the Guru is basically just to get rid of it.
Yes, yes.
I'm awfully sorry, we've got to come to an end.
We've got to come to an end, that's what Bhagavan tells us, but we haven't yet come to an end.